this video, we're going to cover how to update permission groups. So we're going to select the permission group name in our permission groups table. As we go through and make these updates, anything that we save here, any changes that we save will be applied at that point to the users that are assigned to this permission group already. Once they refresh their page or log into Canix Next, they'll see these updated permissions applied to them. For manufacturing tech, most of my permissions are going to be no access, but I'm going to go through starting from the bottom and just double check some of my access as I explain some of the different permission groups or permissions that you have available. Starting at the bottom with labor costs, these permissions cannot be the same. They can both not be edit access and they both can't be view access. You either want to give no access to all of them or stagger them like I have here. In this first permission, this gives access to seeing the labor cost as well as the labor hours assigned to things like a manufacturing batch or assigned to a package. If you don't want users to see the labor costs on a package, meaning they can kind of back into the user's hourly rate, then you want to give only view or edit access to the labor hours only. So in this case, I'm going to give no access to seeing cost as well as no access to even seeing the labor hours on packages. For manufacturing, I do want my users to also set the labor hours that were worked in that step, but I don't want them to see the cost. So I'm going to set the bottom option to edit, meaning my users will be able to set the total number of hours, but they won't be able to see the cost associated with those hours. You'll see my top row is now turned to a dark gray, meaning it's not really the permission that's taking precedence at this point. The next one is the integration section. I'm going to select no access for all of them, as I don't need any of my users to manage my integrations at this point. The admin section helps manage whether users can manage different user settings, like the hourly rate on different users, as well as seeing the labor costs then. And I still don't want them to manage those users, so I'm going to select no access. If at any point I want my manufacturing techs to bulk upload new packages, new non-cannabis inventory, or update information about any of my inventory, I can set access to my facility data uploaders, but by default, none of my users assigned to this group can make any actions in bulk with those uploaders. Billing details will restrict the billing details section of the navigation menu, meaning they can't update my credit card information or see my subscription details like my monthly rate. Facility management manages my facility settings, so I'm going to restrict that from being edited by my manufacturing techs. And I don't want them to manage my users, even that hourly rate, so I'm not going to give them access there or to changing any of the permission groups. If you do give a user access to edit permission groups, theoretically they can give their own permission group more access, which then lets them apply themselves access to any of these areas you might not want to give them to. So be aware that if you give a user permission groups permission access to user permissions, they can update their own permissions as well as others. Facility data manages those items, locations, strains, as well as vendors in any custom growth phases and custom package phases. And submissions allows that user to, under user submissions, see a list of all submissions that took place in the facility. Lastly, API keys allows that user to have access to pull information from the API as well as generate API keys. And if you don't want them to manage it at that point, I'm going to give them no access here. My manufacturing techs are managing my labels for me, so I'm going to select Edit. And this allows them to create new label templates to use as well as to generate new labels. In this case, I'm not using forecasting and planning, so I'm going to give no access to this section in the menu so that they don't update any of my production planning or cultivation settings, but I do want them to have access to certain reports. Now, my manufacturing techs aren't doing anything around sales reporting, and I don't want them to create any custom reports at this point, so I'm going to give them no access. And they don't have anything to do with accounting, anything around accounts receivable or looking at my cost information. And they also don't have anything to do with my harvest information. I don't need them to run any strain summaries around my current plant inventory, but I might have them look at some of my inventory information. In this case, I want them to look at total inventory, like my production overview, all of my non-cannabis usage, stuff around the purchasing that they've done, and I even want them to see some adjustments in waste, as well as an overview of my inventory. None of this other information they might need access to, like cultivation or facility data, but they will have access to my inventory reporting, definitely my manufacturing, no labor reporting, and no plants reporting. Now that everything looks correct on my reporting side, they'll have access to the correct reports under reporting. Next, I do have some manufacturing techs creating a few tasks to assign to people. So I'm giving them edit access to create new tasks, but they can also manage our templates that tasks are created from, as well as workflows that could be scheduled. Next is manufacturing. And I don't want my techs to manage my batch templates. They can go ahead and view the templates I've already set up for them, but they shouldn't be able to edit the steps I've already done. So I view access for those, and they can manage any batches or runs on the manufacturing side under manufacturing. However, within the manufacturing batches, you need access to create packages and to use non-cannabis inventory, as those are key parts to executing the runs. So I need to give limited access to managing my packages and non-cannabis inventory in the inventory section. So under packages, I'm going to give edit access to all package creation and management actions and all actions related to non-cannabis inventory. So they can add new inventory as well as deduct inventory and view any cost around that. I don't want my manufacturing techs to manage my bill of materials, but I do want them to use them. So I'm going to give view access only to those. Now that everything is set up for managing packages, they have the correct permissions to create new packages, and use non-cannabis inventory. I'm going to give my final step as no access to any sales or transfer related activity and no access to any cultivation related activity. Lastly, I don't have any approval permissions set other than sending my manufacturing runs to approval. However, I want them to just go through a double checking step, so I still want my users to be able to also approve the same step that they've sent for approval. This means they can create new packages, they can use non-cannabis inventory, they can submit the manufacturing runs, all for approval. But at that point that they've gone to an admin pending approval, they'll also be able to approve or deny their own submission as that double check. I'll go ahead and save this permission group, and all of those permissions are now updated for any users assigned to my manufacturing tech permission group.